Our mentor's bio: Chimezie Nwabueze is a certified emotional intelligence coach and trainer, a life coach, a productivity coach, and the founder of the Man Academy, where he equips men for a purposeful life. He is the international coordinator and training lead at EQ2 Homes, a non-profit committed to empowering children and youth with the life skills to help them thrive in life. Chiman, as he is often called, sees himself as a solutions architect, often performing in diverse capacities across the fields of his work and responsibilities to help solve problems. Chiman believes in intentional and consistent growth as a hallmark for a purposeful life. Chimezie is happily married to his babe, Dr. Covenant Nwabueze. Without further ado, and with a round of applause, please let's welcome our mentor for tonight, Mr. Chimezie Nwabueze. You are welcome, sir.
Thank you very much for that rousing introduction. Thank you so much, everyone. Can we hear me clearly? We are going to have a very interesting and enjoyable experience. So before I start, let me do some housekeeping, if I may. First of all, I want to appreciate Nicholas, for giving me the privilege to share with you guys and to be able to transfer some mindsets to us this evening. Nick is a friend and brother to me, and when he calls, my bias is always towards saying yes. All right, so that being said, secondly, I want to ask that we all be prepared to speak impromptu. My classes or my sessions are usually not just teaching all through. I like to engage you and be sure that you're fully present. All right, so don't catch yourself distracted. I may just call you when you're distracted. And finally, before I proceed, I just want to confirm, is it okay with you if in the course of my teaching, I use some biblical examples? I want to be sure if there's anyone here who's not of the Christian faith, so it doesn't seem like I am pushing my religion on you. We're going to use scientifically proven principles, trust me. But science is catching up with God. So oftentimes there are certain concepts I go to scriptures to show the foundation of them. So are we all cool with me using Bible examples in the course of the teaching? Does anyone have a problem with that?
Yes, that's fine, sir.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you,
Yes,
Mercy.
we're good with it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. All right, so let's kick off. Today we're going to look at growth paradigm. And as you can see from my face, I am really excited about sharing this with us. I just want to pull up my slide. Let's go to Windows. Yeah, this is it. All right, beautiful. So let's confirm that we can see my screen.
Yes, sir, we can see your screen.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, so today we are looking at growth paradigms, and we're going to start with the two keywords here, growth and paradigm. I'm going to be having two sessions with us, one today and one next week. So today, I'm going to use it to lay some foundations, but we're going to do some practical examples in class so you can begin to embody what we are teaching today. And the first question that comes to mind, I'm not going to go into growth first. I want to look at paradigms. And if I ask you, what are paradigms in your opinion? What do you think paradigms are? I'd like to get responses. So in the class here, I'm not this is not JAMB or WAEC or SAT or GRE. I want to know what you think paradigms are. When you hear the word paradigms, what comes to your mind? Okay, thank you. Peace says patterns. I can only see a response from Peace. Mercy, what do you think paradigms are? Precious, Hosanna, Daniel, Abigail, Precious says they are models of structures. Beautiful. Who else? What comes to your mind when you hear the word paradigm? You know, paradigm is one of those words that people use very often without really thinking about it. Yeah, paradigm shift. What is paradigm shift? What does it mean to have a paradigm shift? If we understand the meaning of the word paradigm, then the expression paradigm shift makes total sense to us. So I'm seeing a lot of patterns, structures. Okay. Bala says patterns or structures of something. Thank you. So paradigms, they are patterns, they are models, they are structures, they are frameworks. Thank you, Esther, frameworks. So the three keywords I'm looking for are already seen in our examples. Gift says conceptual frameworks and model perspective. You guys are amazing. You guys are incredible. Nick, you have very brilliant people here. So let's go back to the slide. So paradigms are models, they are frameworks, they are structures. Right. Now, I want you to consider those three words: patterns, models, and frameworks. When we talk about paradigms, we are looking at conceptual frameworks or models through a lens through which we interpret the world, through which we interpret situations, through which we interpret circumstances. So paradigm, people have a political paradigm, people have an economic paradigm, people have a paradigm about how they operate in a certain way or in a certain sphere or in a certain context. Now, the three key things I was looking for there are patterns, models, and frameworks. And the reason I highlight these three things are simple. Number one, patterns speak to habits that we have developed consciously or unconsciously, intentionally or unintentionally. They have become patterns by which we operate. And this is going to come in handy in the course of this session. So flow with me. These talk about us. Patterns talk about me. So my paradigm, if you want to understand my paradigm around money, you may want to observe my patterns with money. What are my spending patterns? What are my saving patterns? What are my patterns with the investments? And some of those things may not even be conscious decisions. It may be operating from my subconscious, what we call schema, from my schema, right? So they may be operating from there, but they have become patterns that I operate with. And in understanding growth paradigms and establishing paradigm shifts, it will be important for you to intentionally x-ray your patterns. And then we'll come to models, and models begin to go externally in the context of growth paradigms. Models begin to go externally. Models are the things that we mirror, the things that have become guiding, in a sense, external patterns for us that we have imbibed and embraced as external patterns by which we do things. And frameworks are actually the foundations that build up the models. So if I must unpack an old pattern or an old paradigm that is not serving me and take up a growth paradigm, I must first of all understand the patterns, the models, and the frameworks that have built up to the current growth paradigm I have, the current way I operate, the current way I do things. And for the sake of this study, I'm going to introduce us to a framework, a model, a paradigm that can help you look at the current outcomes you're getting and why it is so, and offer you an insight into how you can begin to see new outcomes and break them down into the change in paradigm, which is what we call paradigm shifts. So the first question I'm going to ask you today, and I want you to take up your pens and do this. I told you my classes are not just teaching. My objective and hope and confidence is that at the end of this session, you will not just go back with head knowledge. Trust me, I've done years, close to 2 decades of head knowledge learning, that you just take notes, jot down things and all, and it doesn't really make any difference. So anytime I show up for sessions, I prefer to approach it in such a way that you are actually doing the work on the go. Right. So here's the first thing I want you to do. And once you do that, I would like you to go to the chat and type done. Write down 3 things that you always do. It could be things you do daily or things you do weekly. But write down 3 things. Now, as I'm asking you this, some of us, this may be the first time in a long time you're sitting down to ask yourself, what are the things I do regularly? So think about your typical day or your typical week. What are the things that you can notice? Just 3 things that you can notice that you do either on a daily basis or on a weekly basis. So, okay, thank you, Anuchi. Anuchi shares 3 things. Pray, write content to post on Facebook, or read or listen to news on current happenings in Nigeria. All right, thank you for sharing that, Anuchi. Okay, I've seen Mildred's response and Mashkura. I hope I didn't pronounce that wrongly. All right, so here's the thing. I want you to look through those 3 things you wrote. And for the sake of your being honest, I'm not going to call anybody to share what they're not comfortable with. But I want you to look through that list of 3 things. And if you were very honest, how many of them are things that, as much as you do them consistently, there are things that you wake up that every day and say, I intend to do this. Of the 3 things that you wrote, how many of them are things that you wake up every day and you intend to do them? So if out of the 3 things you wrote, all 3 of them are things that you wake up and you intend to do, you write 3/3. If it is only 2 out of them, write 2/3. So I'm seeing responses already. Gifts to Abigail to, okay. Rishasan. Okay, let me just do come to Joshua says 3/3. Ami says 3/3. All right, I'm seeing 2/3, 3/3, 1/3. Moses, thank you for your honesty, especially because most people are writing 2 and 3. Being very honest to say it's only 1. I like that. And it's 1/3. Okay, beautiful. So why am I asking us this question? We're talking about growth paradigms. We're talking about patterns, frameworks, models, and all of that. And one thing we need to understand is that when we talk about growth, we're talking about oftentimes those people look at growth and they look at outcome, like I've grown, I'm growing into this and all. And we look at the outcome, the end results. If I say I want to grow, I have to be specific. What am I growing into? What is growth to me? What does growth mean to me? Right. And if I consider that, I'm thinking of an end goal and end result. But what builds up to those end results are patterns, models, everyday habits and behaviors, everyday decisions, everyday stories that we tell ourselves. And that's what we're going to be exploring today. Now, having looked at everything you've written out of the 3 of them, you see that 2/3, for example, are things that you intend to do. You want to ask yourself, that 1/3 that are not things that I intend to do. How did I settle into that pattern? How did I settle into that pattern? How did I get comfortable in that pattern? I'll give us one very common example of a pattern that I've noticed in over 6, 7 years of coaching that I've noticed with people. It's social media distraction. Now, if you ask the average person, are you addicted to social media? They will tell you they are not. If you ask the average person, are you hooked on social media? They'll tell you they are not. But if you explore the pattern, if you explore the pattern of operation, the habits, you realize that they are hooked. Anything that takes away your ability to, your agency of choice and decision is beginning to lord itself over you. And it's a pattern you need to check. So there's a chance that that 1/3 thing that is not something you wake up in the morning intending to do, but it has settled into a pattern, is a pattern you then need to explore and change. So we're looking at growth paradigms. All right. Now that's the first exercise. Let's go on. Moving on from that, just keep that one thing in mind. And we're going to look at this idea of outcomes. But before we get there, I want you to notice how that these things you mentioned, Some of them seem so normal. Some of them seem like if we were to ask you, what are the habits that affect your growth? Or what are the habits that impact your growth? There's a chance that you may skip one or two of them. There's a very high chance because they are routine, they are so normal to us that we don't, oftentimes subconsciously, unconsciously, we relegate them to it's nothing. But everything that's become a pattern in your life has become something that affects your growth. Right. Now, exercise number 2 that I want us to go through is I want you to think about the beliefs or habits that you notice that are holding you back from growing. Let's leave habits. We've talked about patterns. These are habits. Let's look at beliefs. And this one can be very difficult to point out if you don't think well. And part of what I'm going to be doing today is taking us through a framework that helps us to unravel some of the beliefs and stories that we tell ourselves. But before we go in there, exercise number 2. In 1 minute, I want you to think about any beliefs that you hold there. If it's possible, think about an important goal or result that you're looking forward to this quarter. Let me not even make it this year, this quarter. In fact, you're in GMP now, Good Mentorship Program. I want to believe that as part of the process in this mentorship program, you have an expectation of an end result at the end of the mentoring, at the end of the 90 days. There's an outcome you're looking for, there's a growth you're expecting, there's a result you're expecting. In the context of that result, I want you to think for a minute and ask yourself, what's one belief, or if you can get up to 3, what beliefs I hold concerning this area that may be affecting my ability to grow in this area. Once again, I'll stop sharing and I'll give you the 1 minute to think about it. And it's okay if in the course of this 1 minute, you find out that you can't exactly lay your hand on a belief. Beliefs are much trickier to unpack than habits. But I want you to think for a moment. Is there any belief you hold about yourself, about your capacity, about your place in the world, about the significance of your actions, about the people around you, about the opportunities and the privileges you have, about the fairness or unfairness of life or where you were born and all. Just think about any belief that you hold that may impact or affect this result or outcome you're looking for and how it could impact or affect it, positively or negatively. And if you're able to come up with any, whether it's 1 or 2 or 3, come to the chat and type belief. And notice some of the specific pointers I gave you. This could make it easier for you to clearly establish what those beliefs are. Right? Those beliefs could be about yourself, your worth, your value, your place in the world, about your capacity, about the significance of your action or inaction, about the opportunities and privileges you have, about the people around you, the systems around you, and all. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of belief. Okay, beautiful. All right. Now, why is x-raying our beliefs very important? And this is going to now take me into the proper teaching for today. Oftentimes, when we think about growth, and this is, by the way, a growth paradigm you need to pay attention to. Oftentimes, when we think about growth, most people think about growth and they're only thinking about the end results, the outcome. When the growth happens in the process, I'll say that again. We often think about growth and we are thinking about the end result, the outcome, whereas the growth happens in the process. And that's why models, why patterns are very important. I often tell the guys in my community in the Man Academy that for every venture or for every endeavor you set out in life, one of the biggest rewards you get is not the achievement of that goal. It's the person that you become. The reason that is important for you to carry is because the version of you that starts out on the journey to accomplishing that goal is not the version that eventually accomplishes that goal. Let me use an illustration that would help you understand it better. If you were to climb Mount Everest, the version of you that started at the foot of the mountain is not the version that gets to the summit. Why is that so? Between the foot of the mountain and the summit of the mountain, you've undergone a journey that has impacted your mindset and your capacity, who you are. That's why there's a Japanese proverb that says that a river cannot flow through the same place twice. And the justification for that is simple. Even though it's the same water body, the water that passed through this morning, even if it's that same water body that is returning the next morning, it's not the same water. It has picked up more particles. It has gone on some new adventures and all of that, some new experiences. It has more things in it that it didn't have yesterday. So here's one thing I want you to carry in mind. As long as growth is concerned, the version of you that woke up this morning, if you were intentional about your growth, the version of you that woke up this morning was an inferior version to the version listening to me right now. I don't know about you, but the version of me speaking to you is a superior version to the one that woke up this morning. I'm going to have 2 sessions with you. The next session is next week. The version that would show up next week will be a much more superior version than the version speaking to you now, simply because there are patterns and processes that would happen between now and next week that will add to Chimezie. So always carry this in mind, that the journey of growth is not just about the outcome, it's about the patterns and processes that lead to the outcome, because it leaves you with a capacity that is able to replicate the results. And that is the most important reward. That I'm able to make $1 million, for example, this week, and I observe the patterns that lead to that $1 million as an example. I have built a capacity in myself to be able to replicate that same pattern, to be able to get that same result, so that even if that $1 million disappears, even if the outcome is no more, there is the version, the superior version of me that is able to reproduce that result. In other words, as long as growth is concerned, instead of me paying attention to the outcome alone, I should pay attention more importantly to the paradigms, the patterns, the models, the framework. Matthew 6:33 says, "Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and every other thing shall be added unto you." The growth version of that, my growth version of that is seek first transformation and immersion, and outcomes shall be added unto you. Seek first transformation and immersion, and outcomes shall be added unto you. Why immersions? John 12:24 says, "Except a seed falls to the ground and dies, it abides alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit, much fruits." Why does the seed have to die in order to bear more fruit? Because the seed as a seed can never produce fruits except the old version, the old form, the old nature of the seed is stripped to be able to birth the nature and the version that produces fruit. So growth is primarily about changing form and changing shape. It is about changing form and changing shape. Growth is not primarily about getting results. I wish somebody is listening to me. Is this making sense to you? Growth is not primarily about getting results. Growth is primarily about changing form and changing shape. And it is in the changing of form and changing of shape that you get the results. And I like to use this image. We're very familiar with this, how a caterpillar becomes a butterfly. It's a transformation that mirrors what growth is and should be for you. That there is a current version of you that is at play right now in the world. But there is a future version of you that is possible. But except the current version of you is able to see, one, the possibility of that future version, that's the outcome. Two, the patterns that can and should lead to that future version. And three, the current patterns. You may not be able to get to that new version. Why is this important? I can see who I want to be, but if I only end there and do not see the patterns that are birthing the outcomes I have now, the results I have now, I may not be able to transform into this new version. Because if the patterns that are birthing the current version of me are sabotaging me, if they are not in alignment with the version of me that needs to get to the goal, I may not be able to get to that goal. I may not be able to grow. So growth is about changing form and shape. It's a change in form. That's why I use the word transform. It's about transformation, the change in form, which in turn results in change in outcomes. It's about a change in form, which in turn results in a change in outcomes. Now, here's how I want to illustrate this for us. This is the current version of you. I want you to pay close attention to this. This is the current version of you. And there is a goal, growth that you want to experience, a goal you want to get to, who you want to be, and all of that. But the current capacity that you have cannot carry the reality of that future capacity. This is why growth is important. And this is why it is primarily about changing of form. Because you will continue to reproduce the same results until you change the paradigms and the patterns that you have, until you change from those current patterns. Ask yourself, the patterns I am currently embracing, can they birth the results I am looking forward to? See, there's an outcome one here, which is what you see. I intentionally use iceberg because, as we know, with the example of icebergs, what you see is not all there is. So what is seen are the outcomes, but beneath the outcomes are the paradigms and the patterns, which I would call your shape, your current shape. And we're going to look at what that shape represents for you and how it forms your outcomes. So this is the current version of yourself, and these are the results you're getting. However, this is the result you want to get. You want to move from this small hill to this great mountain. But you will need to change your current patterns to be able to accommodate the results that you're looking for. You see, these patterns underneath the water here cannot carry these results at the top here. Is someone following? Someone's mic is unmuted, right? These shape, these out patterns here cannot carry these results at the top here. So this has to somehow find a way to transform from this small thing here to this big, enormous underbelly here to be able to carry these results. And that is what your change in shape is about. It's about realizing that to get this outcome, these results, you have to build on these paradigms. So how do I change shape? How do I change my shape is a question you want to ask yourself. I said that growth is primarily about changing shape. And I'm going to use the acronym for shape. This is a framework we use in EQ Mentors Hub, part of the places I work, to break down how our outcomes are gotten and how, if you can understand what your current shape is, then you can begin to make sense of how they may be affecting your outcomes. And then you can still use that same framework and say, if this current shape is giving me this result, what is the shape I need to change to in order to get the result I want to get? So before we get into that, I want you to come to the chat room again and type, I will change my shape. 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 I want to use this to ensure that you're still following. And this is the basis and the foundation that we are going to lay to now go into rewiring and repatterning and results by next week. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of responses now. That's beautiful. I will change my shape. I will change my shape. Okay, beautiful. I will change my shape. So how can you change your shape? How can Chimezie change his shape? How can Precious, Hosanna, Ame, Mercy, Gifts, Abigail, Esther, how can you change your shape? So what is your current shape? Let's look at that. In order to change my shape, I need to understand what my current shape is. And the S in my shape stands for the stories I am telling myself. The stories you're telling yourself right now. And the stories you're telling yourself are the beliefs that you have subscribed to, the beliefs that you have embraced about yourself. So if you look back at that earlier activity, I asked, what are the beliefs you have about yourself? It can begin to give you a sense of some of the limiting mindsets that could impact the new result you're trying to get. I'll give us an example. And this is a very common example that most of us, most people in church struggle with. I struggled with it at some point in life. When we grew up being told that money is the root of all evil, which was a misrepresentation of scripture. And so we grew up, the first time I started going to conferences and all of that to grow myself, when they start talking about making affirmations and commitments to making more money and getting rich, I would say some of those things. But in my head, I'm telling myself money is the root of all evil. And so the story I'm telling myself is that if I begin to pursue or if I begin to engage in endeavors that would help me increase financially, that I'm subscribing to sin against God. And so what happens is that creates what we call a cognitive dissonance in psychology, where what you say you're trying to pursue does not agree. It's incongruent with your beliefs. And so your beliefs, the story you tell yourself, would always sabotage that pursuit. So when I asked you concerning beliefs, that in line with that goal you're trying to pursue, what are your beliefs concerning yourself, your worth, your capacity, your place in the world, the significance of your actions? It's because in explaining those things, you can begin to see some of the things you tell yourself, some of the agreements you make with yourself internally that may not align with the result externally you say you want to get. If in your head you think people like me don't do things like this, then however you shout at the top of your voice that, oh, I believe I can do this, if you're still holding on to the story that people like you can never do things like this, that would sabotage the outcome that you're trying to get. If you tell yourself that I don't have the ability to do such and such a thing, you would sabotage your ability to think of creative ways to go around accomplishing that. So sometimes I hear people say things like, oh, Mr. Chi, I like your confidence and boldness in speaking to people. I don't think I can do that kind of a thing. And like, you think I was born like that? I wasn't. I took classes, I learned, made mistakes, and I'm not yet perfect. But I always tell myself when I get the chance to speak with people, because I've done this for years, but even till now, I tell myself that part of the expressions of the gifts of God and the purpose of my life have to be communicated through my word. So when I show up in places like this, I'm excited. I'm not anxious. I'm excited to come and teach, to come and interface with you. Why? Because I'm telling myself the story that I have something worthwhile. I'm telling myself the story that what I have to say to you today is going to be very critical and pivotal in the course of your life. And so, even in my preparing for the sessions, I prepare with that consciousness that I know that at the least one person will go away from this session with their lives transformed. So, I'm excited. So it gives me the confidence to show up. I don't have stage frights coming to this place. I've never met any of you, but I think I was telling Taiwo that if it's possible that as much as you can, when you come into this session, you turn on your video so I can see your faces because I want to see your faces. I want to compliment you. I want to, even if I'm not meeting you in person, meet you and be able to connect with you. I'm telling myself stories that are empowering my confidence to show up and deliver on what I need to deliver on. Does that make sense to somebody? So, what stories are you telling yourself in line with that goal you're trying to pursue? What beliefs do you have? One of the things I mentioned in this belief is your belief around your place, concerning your place in the world. And that is a very important aspect of belief that most of us don't pay attention to. I often say to guys in my community again that you are consequential. Your actions and inactions are consequential. I carry a belief about my life that the words that I speak, the actions that I take, and the things that I do have a ripple effect through eternity. It may be one person who I'm speaking to, but the words I say to them carry grace such that if it can touch this person, through this person, other lives will be affected. I saw an expression of sometime. The person said, the things we do in life echo through eternity. I carry that consciousness. It's a story I tell myself about my place in the world, my significance, the significance of my actions. It reminds me every time I wake up, every time I show up, to walk circumspectly, as the scripture says, knowing that your actions have an effect in the big story of the world. Here's one thing that most people don't realize. We are all parts and parcel of a big story being written. And the part you're playing is going to affect the nature of the world. In case nobody has told you that, the life you're living is affecting the state of the entire world. So your actions are not insignificant. So when you tell yourself the stories that your actions are very significant, there are persons who have gone into vices because of the actions and inactions of just one single person in their life. There are persons who have lived exceptional lives because of the belief and inspiration of just one person to them. That person didn't need to affect thousands of people. They only needed to affect that one person, and that one person's life affected thousands and millions. So your actions matter. But what story are you telling yourself about the significance of your life in the world? So what beliefs do you have concerning that goal? Concerning yourself. So stories here talk about your stories about yourself. When we come to the A, assumptions, we are looking at the stories you're telling yourself about other people, about external factors. Stories here, what stories are you telling yourself about yourself? That's the the S in the H, sorry. The H becomes the habit you subscribe to because of those stories. The patterns you subscribe to because of those stories. So here's another thing I will say to you, and I know a lot of people don't think about it that way. I tell people I curate my social media consumption very diligently, very diligent, and the way I use social media. And the reason is simple. I believe that everything I feed myself with, whether through my eyes, my ears, my mind, my mouth, even the things I say, are things that I feed myself with. I believe that every single thing contributes to the state of my mind. So I don't dwell on anything that does not serve the kind of life I want to live, because I believe that my actions are very important in shaping who I am. Now, that's the story I'm telling myself. How has that translated to habits or patterns? I don't, most times, I think what it's even in a sense part of a disadvantage for me. I was telling my wife some weeks ago that, well, maybe the time is coming when I need to outsource my social media this thing to a PA, because simply I'm not the kind of person that feel I'm missing out on any gist or gossip if I stay off social media for 1 week or 1 month. However, almost on a daily basis, I use social media. I go on Instagram to check specific posts and content to learn. And so it creates a pattern in me where I don't idly just stay online or any social media platform idling around for hours. Make no mistake, I used to be that person, but I started changing my shape. Told myself, no, you can't live a careless, unintentional life. So there's one paradigm I use in my framework I use in my use of social media. So let me share that with you. That can help you. And I learned this from one of the persons I follow, also one of the persons I learned from. And he called it the concept of create before consume. Create before consume. So before I get online on any social media platform, I must ensure that they have created something. I've written something to my community. I've worked a bit on some of my long list of topics and things, curriculums I'm developing, whatever it is. But I make sure I've created something of my own. Maybe written something on my journal, whatever it is. I create before I consume. And even in consuming, I ensure that I consume what is healthy to my soul. So it's either taking a course, whatever it is, learning, and even in entertainment. So you don't think I'm one uptight person that doesn't like entertainment. I like entertainment, but I also curate who I get entertainment from, because here's one very subtle thing that most people miss. Entertainment is one of the most powerful mediums or media, whichever one you subscribe to, of transferring culture and mindset. So I'm very intentional about who I receive entertainment from. So your stories, the stories you tell yourself about yourself, ripple down into your habits and patterns. And those habits and patterns would often overlap into the assumptions you embrace. Now, assumptions are the stories you tell yourself about the world, about people, about external things. So when you hear people say, all men are scum, when you hear people say, no, never trust any woman, and all of that, those are pervasive ideologies people are embracing. But what makes you subscribe to that, if you subscribe to that? You that is joining them mindlessly and saying that, it's because there's a story you're unconsciously telling yourself that I'm so unimportant that I cannot sit down and mindfully curate the beliefs I want to hold on to. So anything that is peddled online, I jump on it and all of that. And you see this story, sometimes when some people say how all over the internet people are doing this, I'm like, all over the internet, which part of the internet are you going to? Because where you are looking for something is as important as what you're looking for. Does that make sense to you? So the assumptions you embrace about the world, about people, when people say things like never trust anybody. And sometimes that could sound like one very deep thing, but that's just a sabotage mindset. Never trust anybody. Do you know that social capital is one of the greatest forms of currency that you would leverage in life? Never trust anybody. I don't want to live a life where I never trust anybody. Why am I married? Why do I have friends? But those are assumptions you embrace because you've let certain stories seep into your mind, and you've carried the stories of people and made it your story, and they've created a pattern that is embracing this assumption. And how could that be sabotaging you? There's a goal you're trying to achieve. You're trying to build a company, you're trying to build a vision, but because you've embraced the assumption that people are not to be trusted, you're missing the opportunity to leverage collaborations that can help that vision grow. And you keep telling yourself, I'm struggling, I can't, this thing is too big to carry. No, it's not too big to carry. There are assumptions that are affecting your ability to reach out, your ability to leverage opportunities that are around you. Change shape, change the stories you're telling yourself, change the patterns you're subscribing to, change the assumptions you're embracing. And when you do these three, it will begin to affect the possibilities that you see. The possibilities you see or do not see are affected by the stories you tell yourself, the habits you embrace, and the assumptions you embrace. I'll give you an example. I have a community of men, the Man Academy, where I'm, by the grace of God, equipping guys and all. I've had the good fortune of leveraging the expertise and the wisdom and the help of people in my circle. I'm not all-knowing. I am very well aware of that. There are certain aspects I would want the guys in my community to learn, and I know people in my circle who I can bring in to teach that or to handle that, and I reach out to them on the basis of social capital and currency. These guys in my community are able to learn more. Here's the thing. If I held on to an assumption or a story, then I should never trust people. And I think only me will have to do it. There are certain things that these guys will be starved of because I am not yet prepared for it. And I do not also see myself trusting somebody else to come in to teach it. I am here having this session with you guys because Nick trusted me enough to reach out to me. So even at the times or in the context where he may not be disposed or he may feel someone else can be better able to handle this for whatever reasons, right? He would be able to, he's seeing the possibility of leveraging the people in his networks. Why? There are assumptions he has. One of the assumptions he may have had is that if I reach out to Chiman, I think Chiman may be able to handle this. I'm hoping that he will be free to come and handle this. But he entertained the possibility that I will give him a yes as an answer for him to be able to reach out. Because there's a story he has told himself about the relationship he has with me. There's an assumption he has allowed himself to embrace that, oh, I can reach out to him at maybe at worst, if he's not free, he will tell me he's not. If he's not disposed, he'll tell me he's not disposed. But is there a possibility? Yes. So because of that possibility, I take action. And ultimately, we'll come to emotions as friends or foes. After minutes, we'll come to emotions as friends or foes. And here, and this is very important for us to pay attention to, here is the fact that you see from S to H to A to P, as all of these interplay, they eventually impact the predominant emotions that we associate with whatever that goal is, whatever that outcome is. If I'm telling myself stories that are disempowering, the chances are that the emotions I will feel in relation to that goal would be disempowering emotions, discouragement, anxiety, fear, and all of that. And those emotions are being fed or fueled by the stories you're telling yourself and the assumptions you're making. And here's the funny thing, there's an intricate interplay between our emotions, our thoughts, and our actions. They all feed each other like vicious cycles until you interrupt that pattern. If your stories and assumptions are constantly feeding fear, constantly feeding inadequacy, constantly feeding unworthiness to you as an emotion, it would hardly see the possibility of growth and success in your tomorrow. So part of what we're going to do next week, I wanted us to do it this week, but for the sake of time, we're going to start next week with that, is to ask yourself, what is my current shape as it has to do with this goal? So as it has to do with this goal, this is the outcome I'm getting, the outcome I'm trying to change. But can I x-ray what my current shape is? Because if I can x-ray what my current shape is, what the stories I'm telling myself, concerning this goal, what the patterns I've subscribed to are, what the assumptions I've embraced are, the possibilities I see, and the emotions predominant in relation to this goal. If I can x-ray that and then ask myself, what is the outcome I want to get? What is the growth final outcome you're looking for in that area? You can then begin to ask yourself, what needs to change in my story? What needs to change in my patterns, in my habits? What needs to change in my assumptions? What needs to change in the possibility I see regarding this? And ultimately, how could all that affect my emotional states and my emotional association as it has to do with this goal? Some of us, you have big dreams and visions. Some of us, it's even instructions from God calling, as it were. But the current stories you're telling yourself are making you feel unworthy. And I'm going to confess and expose myself a bit. I started the Man Academy 2 years ago. Before I started the Man Academy, that vision, that call, that vision came to me 7 years prior to when I started it. One of the things that made it delay stories. One of the stories then was her young guy like me. How can someone like me be behind this kind of vision? Me, I never learned anything for this life. Which one is, and it kept on coming for years. And I'll write down some plans and all of that, but I'll still go back to they are older people. And I follow a lot of people I learn from, like all the Larry Olushola them and all the big names and all of that. They've not started this, me that want to start it and all. The moment I let myself change the story, just changing the story helped me see new possibilities. The moment I shifted my story from how can someone like me be worthy to carry this to there's a reason why this call has been vested on me. And if God wants me to carry this, then he's going to provide the direction, the resources, and everything needed to carry this vision. And so I'm ready, not because I have all the capabilities. And it's not even because I need to have all the capabilities. You see, my possibilities are opening. Actually, what is this vision about? It's not about me coming to show guys that I know everything about him, and because I don't. But it's about me creating the hub and the place for them to be able to grow. So that means it doesn't have to be me alone carrying it. I mean, of course, I have to be prepared to some extent, but I don't have to be the only person who is. The possibilities opened the moment the stories changed. And because of that, I developed a pattern of asking now building on, okay, what needs to be done? Asking questions, reaching out to people, developing curriculums, asking myself, observing the needs and the gaps and the things that men need and all, because I allowed myself to change my story. The moment my shape changed, the outcome changed. So, what stories are you telling yourself? What stories are you telling yourself about the outcome that you want? Growth paradigm, growth patterns, growth models. The shape is telling you that you need to change your current shape in order to grow into the new outcome. Your current shape and form has to change to a shape that is able to carry the new outcome. So I'm going to end here today by saying this. Never be that person whose fixation is only on the outcome and you're constantly running away from the pattern. If there's anything you must pay attention to, let it be the pattern. Let it be the pattern. Let it be the pattern. If you go through creation from the beginning of time till now, God works with patterns. And one of the reasons why God works with patterns is because patterns give you a framework, a paradigm, a model that can help you replicate that result over and over again. So instead of focusing on the outcome alone, you want to focus on the pattern. Some of us run away from process. Except a seed goes to the ground, falls to the ground, and dies, it abides alone. But when it dies, it bears much fruit. Except you allow your current shape to fall to the ground and die, you will keep producing the current result you're producing. But if you give yourself permission to do away with the old story, to do away with the old shape, like that caterpillar transforming into a butterfly, give yourself the permission to take off your old shape and embrace a new shape. And the transformation you would experience will marvel you. Some of us are still telling ourselves stories about our past when there's a glorious future beckoning on you. Do it with that old shape. Let it go. Yeah, the people around you, people that saw you grow up, they knew when you were failing in class. They knew when you were playing in the sand. They knew you from childhood. So what? Forget about the past. Or what is the future saying? What is tomorrow saying? What stories do you need to reinforce in your mind about tomorrow? What patterns you need to begin to embrace to get to tomorrow? What assumptions you need to begin to embrace? What assumptions you need to let go of to get you to where you're going? So next week, we're going to start with the exercise on shape. And I'm hoping that we all took note of this. So you can take a picture of this. I need you to take note of this, that for you to get to the new outcome, this has to change. Stories you're telling yourself, the patterns you're subscribing to, the assumptions you're embracing, the possibilities you see, they have to change for you to get the new outcome. That's one great paradigm you need to embrace today. Next week, we're going to look into, so I'm going to skip all of this. We're going to start next week with this exercise. And then next week, we'll look into rewiring your mindset for growth, reframing for new outcomes, pattern replacement, and empowerment anchors. This is the summary of what we're going to do next week, right? By the time we finish the exercise on your shape. All right. So I would stop here today so I don't overload us, and I would want to get questions. Please don't be afraid to ask me questions. I look forward to question sessions during my session. So whatever thing that is not clear from everything I've said today, we can ask.
Okay, good evening, sir.
Good evening, Anuche.
Good evening, sir. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for the talk. I really appreciate. My question is, I know you have done justice to most of the things. The question I'm even about asking, I know you have done justice to it, but I want to still ask. Let me give an example so that you clearly understand what I'm trying to say. Let's say
Okay.
somebody has a passion to go into photography, but the first thing is that the person is scared. What if I should put money into this thing, start the training, it doesn't work out? Number two, the person is not receiving any source of encouragement at all. Maybe the person is around him and telling her, you could go for something else now. Why must it be photography, this, that? So the question I want to ask is that this person is afraid of taking a risk. That is the major challenge. So what can you say to the person that will serve as an encouragement? Telling the person that, okay, imagine the person now put something like 100,000 naira into learning the photography for like 3 months. And after the person has gone and has learned it for 3 months, he's afraid that what will happen that after that 3 months, what if it happens that I don't succeed? What's an encouragement? What do you have to tell the person?
Okay. So stay on the call with me, Onuche.
Okay.
To answer this question, I want to first say that it's not an encouragement I'll give the person.
Okay.
For the sake of time, I wish I could do a coaching role play with you. Because the very first thing I'll ask the person is, why do you want to go into photography?
Okay.
And do you know the reason I'll ask that?
Why, sir?
Because sometimes we assume on the surface that what our own assumptions are about people's motivation is what their reasons are, and we try to solve what is not the problem.
Okay.
People go into different endeavors for different reasons. I'll give you an
Okay.
example. I do web design as part of the things I do. When I got into web design, it wasn't because I had a passion for web design. It was because I identified it as an area of problem solving I can make money from. Now, here's the thing. At the time I was going in, I was solving a problem in my organization. Then our website was static. We were starting up at the time, and we didn't have funds to pay established web designers. So I went into doing that so I could build for the organization and then learn to do that and make money from it. I had intrinsic motivation enough that was carrying me that in that moment, if someone told me to leave, that I wouldn't have left it. And you may assume it's because I was so passionate about web design. It wasn't. So the question I'll ask the person is, why do you want to go into photography? If this person wants to go into photography primarily because they want to make money, right? And they are afraid of losing money if they put in money there. And someone else comes and shows them another opportunity that can make 3 or 4 times what they would have made in photography. They could easily leave photography. Does that make sense? So instead of encouraging the person, what I would do is to go on a session with the person where I would try to ask them questions that help them clarify at the root of the matter what exactly is funding the decision to go into photography. Let me use Nigeria context as an example. A lot of people in Nigeria are doing a lot of things, not as a passion, but as a means to an end. So if you're trying to encourage or motivate the person on that means to an end, and opportunities arise for them to get to that end without having to go through that means, they will leave that means. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yes, sir.
So understanding the motivation is the whole thing about risk. The truth is, oftentimes when we talk about risks and things like this, the reason oftentimes that people are afraid of taking risks, even in the direction of what they say they want to do, is because somewhere in the chain of thoughts and considerations, the thing they are doing, the why, the motivation is not yet strongly founded.
Okay.
Do you understand what I'm trying to say? I'll give you an
Yes, sir.
example. If you dropped $1,000 before me now and told me I had the option to either use it and go for shopping or sign up for a course, the shopping is not a temptation to me. I'll sign up for, I have things I want to upskill. I have intrinsic motivation that it's not looking like a risk to me. And here's the funny thing, I'm not doing it because I'm expecting that in the next 2 months, this $1,000 I spent on this training now, I'm going to make it back from I'm doing it because the things I've identified I want to grow, the areas I've identified I want to grow are important intrinsically to me, that the shopping is not temptation. And that money I'm going to spend on that course or that training is not risk. For somebody else, it's risk. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? For somebody else, it may be risk because they go spend $1,000 on top of this thing. How I want to make them back. What if I spend this $1,000 on this and I'm not able to make it back? For me, it's no risk. For me, the reason I want to do it is because capacity in me needs to grow.
Needs to grow.
Do you understand? So it's not encouragement the person needs. It's clarity on motivation. Why are they going into photography? If the motivation is strong enough, some of the things they are calling risk, the story will change. The stories about it will change. So in a sense, if you want to use our shape framework to explore this now, you ask yourself, what is the story this person is telling themselves about their investing in photography? Do you understand? If you explore that deeper and understand what the motivation is, if the person is considering spending 100,000 naira on that and they are wondering if it's a risk, if you dig deep, the person may be thinking of alternatives that they could use that 100,000 for.
True.
And exactly, a simple alternative could be, see, I know get money to chop for the next 1 month. I no get money to pay house rents, this one, that one, and I want to put money inside this thing. And if those things are more important than this photography thing to the person, any encouragement you're doing is a waste of time.
True.
You're welcome.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
You're welcome, sir. Any other questions?
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, Daniel, for the question. Please, any other person? Okay. So we have a question in the chat box. Let me read that out from Sylvester U. He says, "Good evening, sir. What advice do you have to offer to one going through identity crisis and inferiority complex?"
You people asking me questions that I wish I could have like classes on them with you guys. Identity is one area I do a lot of teaching with my guys in the community. So someone going through identity crisis and inferiority complex, I would depart a bit from the SHAPE protocol, but it still applies to it because again, inferiority complex goes very deeply into the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves. Right. Inferiority complex means that there's a book I wanted to recommend. I would speak with Nick before. Maybe you can recommend it. I'm very careful about recommending books and communities that are not mine, just in case the books are not in alignment with your values. Anyways, there's something psychologically called agreements, internal agreements we make with the world. If I'm walking along the way and a stranger sees me and tells me I am mad, I won't get offended. Why won't I get offended? The person does not know me. So telling me I'm mad is, for me, it's a reflection of maybe this person is in a bad mood today. I wouldn't feel bad that, am I a mad person? So there's nothing in me that has agreed with that external opinion. Does that make sense? So inferiority complex is often an indication that there are internal conversations and stories in us that are agreeing with opinions and assumptions and stories we are telling ourselves about ourselves in relation to other people that makes us look small. It is also an indication, it can also be an indication that we are evaluating and assessing our worth with sometimes our performance or our current state in life. What do I mean? I may not have as much money as the next person, but I won't come into a room thinking that they are worthier than me of love, of respect, of honor, fundamentally as a human being. It has nothing to do with what they have and they don't have. And vice versa. I won't come into a room. Let me give you an example. I have the privilege right now to be handling this session with you guys. At the back of my head, I'm not thinking that all of you here are not worthy as me. I'm better than you guys here. The only implication of it is that I have value and capacity that I can share with you and help you grow. It doesn't fundamentally make me worthier than any of you or better than any of you. Because at the end of the day, what I have, I received, I learned, I grew through it. And what says you can't grow to that? Do you understand? So sometimes inferiority complex is an indication that you're attaching your worth to performance, achievement, and all of this. And that's not where your worth is. I asked at the beginning of the session if it's okay with you guys if I use examples from scripture. Your worth was interpreted on the cross. Your value was determined on the cross. And I know that sounds like a cliche thing, a church thing to say, but if you permit me for a minute or two, do you know what it means that God died for you? I'm not trying to preach here. I want you to think about this logically. Do you know what it means? If you understand, how many of us know? Okay, I'll give this as an assignment. Part of the things I want you to do within this week before we come next week, go and read about the known universe. Go and read, just Google the known universe. Read about the dimensions of the universe. Read about the vastness of it, right? And read about the fact that Earth inside our solar system is so small. And our solar system inside our galaxy is so insignificantly small. And our galaxy inside the entire universe is so, see, the dimension of the Earth in relation to the size of our galaxy is smaller than the dimension of one grain of sand in relation to the entire Earth. That's how vast the universe is. Now, you are a speck in that smallness normally. Now, do you know what it means that the person who made all of that thing by the breath of his mouth decided to take residence in you? When I say my life is significant, when I speak to the guys in my community, and when I tell them your life is significant, this is one of the things I tell them. My life is significant because I understand the value and the worth of the person who has placed value on me. So there's nobody in this world that makes me feel inferior. Oh, there are people that inspire me. There are people that make me get inspired to grow and learn. But there's nobody in this world that makes me feel inferior. Nobody. And it's not from a place of pride in myself. It's from a place of appreciation of the value that God has placed on me to come and die for me and take residence in me. So that when he said that you are a city set on a hill that cannot be, you are the light of the world, it's because I understand that he has given me permission. It's his light in me shining. Does that make sense? So the advice I'll give to this person that is dealing with identity crisis and inferiority complex on the identity spectrum, simple. Stop trying to define your identity by what people are saying identity is. The ideas of people about men, about women, about people. Ask yourself fundamentally, who am I? Who has God said I am? I know it sounds cliche again, but these are the dimensions of, even when I coach people, these are the dimensions of coaching where I always bring in, because that's the fundamental truth. Understanding who I am in the grand scheme of God's plan gives me identity. Let me shock you. I am not a life coach. It's a role I take. I'm not an emotional intelligence coach. It's a role I take. Sometimes we attach our identity to our accomplishments and our roles and positions. I know for the sake of what do I call it now? I mean, for the sake of context like this, someone wants to introduce ourselves in platform, we use that. But for me, I always remind myself that's not my identity. That's the role I'm fulfilling. Today, I'm fulfilling the role of mentor and coach to you guys. Tomorrow morning, I'll be fulfilling the role of husband to my wife. Tomorrow afternoon, I'll be fulfilling the role of maybe younger brother to my elder sister. All those are roles. They're not my identity. My identity is a child of God, light in the world, salt that salts the earth. I'm the light of the world. That's what gives me the confidence to show up in places like this and share the wisdom of God that through the years, through training and growth and the grace of God, I've been able to build. You can do that also. You can do that also. So anchor your identity not on achievement, accomplishment, performance, or even delay or the current states of things with you. Sometimes we are passing through seasons, difficult seasons. Everybody does. We're passing through dry seasons and all, and we begin to think we're no longer worthy. That's because you're attaching your identity to your performance. I used to be there too. Where because I didn't have certain things at certain times, I begin to feel like I'm no longer valuable. That's not true. That's not true. At all times, remind yourself who you are. This is where we bring in things like reaffirming your affirmations and all of that, where it really works, where you pay attention to what it is. 2 weeks ago, I taught my community guys on the importance of a life creed, creating a life creed for yourself, guiding principles by which you lead your life, and remind yourself who you are and what you stand for in the world. Remind yourself that the world has enough mediums to try and impose their definition of you on yourself. So my advice to you is to define yourself based on who God has said you are and constantly reinforce that to yourself. Constantly. Matthew 5:14-16 is one of my everyday scriptures because it's part of my life creed. I'm a city set on a hill. I can't hide. Regardless of the season in my life, I'm a city set on a hill. I carry value. And it's not dependent on what I have achieved or not, or what I'm going through or not. I'm still light. Light shines. Does that make sense? Right. So divorce your identity and self-worth from accomplishments, achievements, and things like that. Okay. Okay. I'm seeing more. Should I attend to this other question? So I'm seeing 3 more questions. Maybe I'll just take 1 minute for these ones so I don't take our time more. Is that okay?
Yes, sir, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, so Victor says, good evening, sir. Thank you for making yourself available. My question is, what do you say to one who lacks clarity on purpose, one who doesn't really know what to make out of life? 2 things. One, purpose is dynamic. Purpose is not one specific thing that is set in stone. Purpose is dynamic. Wake up every day and what's your purpose for today? When you're not clear about the big picture, be grounded in what you should do in the small picture. That's one of the things I've used to guide my life. Here's the truth. There is never a time and there's never a man who lived who at every single point in time knew exactly how their life was going to turn out. But you know the kind of life you're meant to live or you're supposed to live or you want to live. This is why defining yourself and who you are and what you stand for is. I wake up tomorrow morning, I have roles to fulfill at work and all of that. I know the kind of person I want to be. Maybe on my way out tomorrow, I meet somebody along the way who needs help. Maybe I meet somebody who needs encouragement. And in that moment, I would offer encouragement. Someone who needs prayer, sick person who needs to be healed, and things like that. I will do that. And that is me fulfilling purpose. And maybe I'm in a season where I'm not yet sure in the big picture, next 5 years or next 2 years, or maybe the plans I've had for the next 5 years are now looking shaky and all. What can I do in the moment? Live your life with that consciousness. Walk circumspectly. Things would eventually fall in place. That's what I would say to you. Sometimes we complicate the idea of purpose and it makes us feel stuck when, in essence, it's just that we are not seeing the full picture and we think that we are stuck. That's what it is. I had a 10-year plan 10 years ago. I had a 5-year plan 5 years ago. Some aspects of them are manifesting. Some of them have been discarded from my plan. Some aspects of my purpose have changed or transformed. But at the core of it is that I know that I am part of God's epistles to the world. I'm part of God's outlets to show his love and shine his light on the world. And as I grow through time and develop and manifest in whatever dimensions they as the Lord leads, some things will become clearer and all. So if you feel stuck right now, just focus on the small picture, the now. What are you supposed to be doing now? Sometimes it can be an indication to what the bigger picture would eventually be. All right, so and then the last question, does failure to acknowledge one's strength to grow hamper transformation? If I understand your question, let me focus on the failure to acknowledge your strength. Yes, it can hamper your your transformation, simply because it's easier oftentimes for us to focus on our weaknesses. And I know conventional advice is to look at your weaknesses and improve in those areas. But sometimes and oftentimes, what that creates is a pattern of saboteurs, internal saboteurs, where we create internal voices that are only criticizing ourselves and seeing ourselves as incompetent, unworthy, terrible, and all. Right. So one of the ways to accelerate your growth is to ask yourself, well, in what areas am I good? In what areas do I have strengths or opportunities or privileges? And I'll use a Bible story as I wrap up. David and Goliath. Sometimes when we read that scripture, we'll lose sight of the fact that, at least according to theologians, David was just a 17-year-old boy at the time, having to go and fight a 9-foot tall giant that veteran soldiers were afraid to fight. What did David do? First off, they tried to dress him up in the warrior's armor and all of that. It was weighing him down. In other words, they were trying to look at where he was not strong enough, his weaknesses. You're not a soldier. Let's dress you up at least to see how we can manage to ensure that you don't die. He was weighing him down. He told them, see, I'm not used to these things. Shebin and me won't go fight. Remove all these things. Let me go and fight the way I know to fight. Fight by my strength. Do you understand? And what did he do when he went there? And Goliath was pouring threats, and or he said to him, "You come to me with arrows and I come to you in the name of the Lord." And one of the things he encouraged himself with in going there, he told to see, and when he was presenting his resume to King Saul, what did he say? "I keep my father's sheep. I know I never go battle, but I know be nobody, my guy. I'm not a nobody. I keep my father's sheep. I know it doesn't seem like much, but I've killed lions, I've killed bears, animals that make grown men run, animals that make grown men pee on their trouser. I don't stand. When lion conquered my papa's sheep, I pursued the lion. I killed him and rescued our sheep. When a bear came, I killed it and rescued my sheep. So who is this uncircumcised Philistine? I see, I may not be a warrior, but I know strength that I can leverage on. So allow me to go and fight this battle. So it's important. And I do this oftentimes. In emotional intelligence, one of the competencies we teach is self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is the ability to leverage on what you have to inspire yourself towards a noble goal. So sometimes that strength could be virtues and characters and qualities that you have. Sometimes that strength could be opportunities. Sometimes that strength could be heritage. That this is my father. Me like this. The prodigal son, after he has messed up, what did he say? What am I doing here like this? My father has had servants who are eating well, and I'm here eating swine food. I'll rise up and go to my father. That's him leveraging on his strength. His father, his heritage was a strength there. Right? So it's important because see, every other person, everything in the world is trying to make you not see your value. Everything in the world, including the enemy. Satan is trying to make you not see your strength. So don't join them. Don't become your own village people. And it's not a call to become ignorantly arrogant. It's a call to acknowledgement of who you are or what you carry. Scripture said in the book of Psalms, it said, "Man that is in honor but knoweth not is like a beast that perishes." In other words, you have privileges and opportunities and strengths and you don't know it. People will play you for less than you are. They'll play you for less than you are. So, all right. I think that is it. Faith says to change our shape, we need to first change the stories we heard, seen. Is that all there is to changing our stories? On a framework level, yes, that's all there is. But that's all there is requires intentional work that sometimes can take you months and years. Belief therapy is one of the most difficult therapies that I've experienced, at least in my line of work, because beliefs that people have held for years that have formed the foundation of their life, it's difficult for them to let go. It's like them losing themselves. So sometimes the stories that we tell ourselves are not that simple to let go. Actually, a lot of the times. It's one of the reasons why people who have attracted sympathy on the grounds of misfortune that happened to them tend to want to stick to that as the only narrative of their life. And if you take that away from them, they feel like they are lost. One of the reasons why top athletes who all their life, their focus is on their sports and all of that, becoming excellent, a lot of them without proper transition struggle after retirement. Because the stories a lot of them have told themselves is that their worth is dependent on their performance on the field. And so when they retire and stop performing on the field, they don't feel like they are worthy of the adulation and all of that. So on a framework level, yes, that's all there is to it. However, in actual implementation, it can be difficult to let go of those stories. And sometimes it's a journey or a work that will take you months, that will take you sometimes years, or you have to be intentional about it. Right. For the sake of time and this thing, we're given the framework of it. As a matter of fact, in my organization, when we do this shape framework I'm giving you, we have a 12-week pathway that people do just to deal with their shape. 12-week, 3 months with daily activity prompts that they do just to deal with their shape. That's for you to understand how powerful those stories can be. All right, so Thank you so much, guys. I think I'll drop the mic here so we don't extend our time any further. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much, sir, for your time. We are really, really grateful. You've really done a good work and a great work in teaching us tonight about growth paradigm.